the governor of the state of Illinois, Patrick Quinn. Governor Quinn.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be at the City Club. All right. Thank you. All right. Appreciate the warm reception on a very cold day. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I do want to thank the City Club and everyone who comes to these luncheons. I thoroughly enjoy them in my time in public life. They're really excellent forums. I was just looking at the schedule this year that Jay and the members have put together. It's quite impressive, and it's so important to our democracy, really, to have this forum where people can speak about the things they believe in and answer questions. So I did want to thank the City Club for the many times I've been here as governor, and before that as well. I think it's very, very important to all of us that we have this dialogue. Also, I want to thank Father Ryan for his kind words and invocation. David, his first name means beloved of God, and I certainly am beloved to David and all the causes that he and many people in this room carry out every day. I think it is important to have causes in life to make life worth living. And I just learned of Dr. Betts's passing. I've known Henry Betts since 1972. That's when I first met him. And what a wonderful man who understood that everybody in, nobody left out when it comes to access to our life in Illinois, life in America. He was a champion of folks with disabilities, and God bless his immortal soul. Now, under our Constitution in Illinois, and I take an oath of office to follow the Constitution, it does say that at the end of a governor's tenure, that he is to make a report to the people, not just to the legislature, and they're all in the back there we saw, but really to all the people of Illinois. And I think it's important that provision was in the Constitution and put in the Constitution, because it's important to look back in time and see where we were and where we are today and where we have to go tomorrow. And I hope today to cover a few of those issues. It's been an honor to be governor. It's a privilege. I've met so many people in Illinois that we have been able to help. And I've been so impressed by how many people in Illinois want to help, who volunteer. The essence of Illinois, the people of our state, is the heart of a volunteer. There are so many different ways to volunteer, and I think it's important for all of us to embrace volunteerism to help our neighbor, and that's what I certainly intend to do. But I really feel that that is something that we should never forget, that the strength of our democracy are really the men and women, the boys and girls, the people of our state who live here. Now, I've had a lot of good things happen in the time I've been governor, almost 6 years. One of them I thought I'd bring today because I worked with Kraft Foods, and we had the Fight Hunger Bowl a couple years ago where the University of Illinois at 6-6 went to San Francisco to play the 6-7 UCLA football team. And it wasn't exactly the Rose Bowl, but it was an important date. I thought Kraft has been a leader in fighting hunger, and we've put together a movement, I think, in Illinois of fighting hunger and making sure that people have enough to eat, the Greater Chicago Food Depository and all of our food banks across Illinois. And just a month or so ago, I announced a grant that will help our food banks really progress here in the 21st century with a very sophisticated internet network to make sure that they can carry out their mission. But when I was with Kraft at the Fight Hunger Bowl, I've eaten a lot of macaroni and cheese in my life, but I have my picture on so I know my mother will be very happy to see this, that we got something out of the last 6 years. And I think it is important to take a look at where we were 6 years ago. Illinois was a laughingstock. We had a very, very serious crisis of corruption. We also had a terrible recession in our country and our state. And we also had, because of that, in large part, but also because of past practices, a very serious fiscal problem for the state of Illinois and its budget. So I inherited all that on the 29th of January of 2009, a fateful day. The legislature impeached my predecessor, and his predecessor was in jail. And they both joined each other, I guess, in jail before too long. And so it really, I think, was a message to all of us that we had to reform things in Illinois and change things. And I want to go over a few of the things that we've been able to do. And just remember, I think, how important it is that we come together and work together as a democracy, as the people of Illinois. Clearly, our unemployment in our country was very drastic indeed. I went to the president's inauguration in January of 2009, and we knew how grim things were in America. But I'm happy to say that the unemployment rate of our state and our country has gone down precipitously since that. In the state of Illinois, we are at our lowest unemployment since June of 2008. The statistics are, in the last 5 months, every single metropolitan area of Illinois has had lower unemployment month by month. Been able to add about 300,000 jobs since the end of the recession. There's more work to do, but we shouldn't kid ourselves that we were in a very grim situation in 2009. We had to rescue our state and our state's economy. We had to make some tough decisions to do that. And we had to work together to do that. When I became governor, I received a call from the CEO at that time of Chrysler. They had 200 jobs in Belvidere, Illinois, one of their premier auto plants in the whole world, really. And now they have 4,500 jobs in Belvidere. Ford had one shift on the south side of Chicago, their oldest plant in their whole system. They now have 3 shifts round the clock. So people working together, working hard. We've been able to rescue our economy and move it forward. I want to go over a few of the things that we've done in order to make that possible. We had to pass the largest infrastructure bill in the history of Illinois right after I was sworn in. For 10 years, Illinois had been trying to do that, but within 10 weeks, we got that bill passed through the legislature. It was a bipartisan bill. It invests in roads. We've done, 8,980 miles of roads and road repair in Illinois. We had to fix our bridges, 1,475 bridges. We had to build and rebuild schools all across Illinois. 1,050 schools, many university buildings. We had to invest in our water systems. We had to invest in our rail systems, which are very important to our economy. We invested in high-speed rail. We invested in sustainability and energy conservation and clean water initiatives. So all of these are important parts of our economy, because if you're going to recover in a tough recession as we had, the deepest recession in my lifetime, you couldn't just run in place. You had to make investments, and you had to get the funding for those investments. It was a $31 billion program that has produced over 400,000 jobs across Illinois for hardworking people. I can remember going to a food bank at the Operating Engineers Local 150 in those tough months where those members had no job whatsoever. And we were able, month by month, to put people back to work. And I think this is a very important lesson for all of us, that when hard times hit, we cannot turn our back to people who need help, but we've got to make these investments that create jobs and create a better economy for the future. We've also been able to build in our state #1 record in the history of Illinois at encouraging other people from other places to visit here. A record in tourism, year after year. And this past year was a mighty year indeed, where people come and visit, and a lot of jobs, over 300,000 jobs, are created in hospitality and service. We now have a film industry in Illinois with a film studio on the west side of Chicago that's created hundreds and hundreds of jobs and $387 million of economic activity. Those things didn't exist back 6 years ago, and we were able, working together, to build them. And we had to make some tough decisions in order to make those opportunities possible. I had to cut the budget by over $7 billion since I've been governor. And we've had to make those cuts in important areas, but we try to always focus on making sure we save our education, save our health care, save our human services, and save our public safety. But we had to reduce the state airplanes. We had to make efficiencies in office space and consolidate office space. I had to close over 50 state facilities, and some of them were very hard. And there was a lot of political opposition. But when you have very little activity taking place at a particular work camp, we just can't keep it open for its own sake. And so we had to make those tough decisions. We were able to get them passed through the legislature. We had to negotiate affordable contracts where there's state employees. We have about 4,000 fewer state employees today than 6 years ago. There were about 54,000 then, roughly 50,000 now. But they do important work, and we should always honor our public servants who are out there every day on the front line. And we negotiated a fair contract with them where they received modest raises, but in return they gave I think concessions with respect to saving money for the taxpayers, $900 million. It was the best contract ever negotiated in the history of Illinois. We had to make some changes in our structure, reforms. We had to reform Medicaid. We had to reform the pension system, both for new employees coming in and existing employees. We also had to reform the unemployment insurance system. About half of the employers in Illinois on January 1st receive a reduction in their unemployment insurance tax, thanks to our reforms. We did that together in a bipartisan way. We also had to reform workers' compensation, and hear a lot about that in the political campaigns. But Illinois' worker compensation costs have gone down more than any other state in the union in the past year. We enacted reforms 3 years ago, again, bipartisan. We got them passed, and they've produced great dividends for our employers and for those who are injured. They must receive compensation in a fair and decent way. So all those things we were able to do. And yes, we had to, at the proper time, get proper revenue to pay the bills of our state of Illinois. I inherited quite a large deficit. We had to do something about it. And I made that decision. I campaigned in 2010 on making sure we had proper revenue to equal the expenditures that the people of Illinois wanted, whether it be in education or health care, human services, public safety, helping our veterans. We have to make sure that we pay the bills. And so I stood for election and was elected, and we have used the income tax, and I think that is always something to remember. The income tax is based on the ability to pay. Ability to pay should always be the watchword when it comes to a budget. And a budget is really what defines our values. In the coming year, there'll be a lot of decisions that need to be made with respect to the budget and our system of revenue. And I think it's important for all of us in this room and all across Illinois to remember the fundamental words of fairness. Is this decision fair to children? Is this decision fair to students? Is this decision fair to workers? Is this decision fair to those who labor on the front line helping others? Is this decision, this budget decision, fair to the future? Because when I was going to college at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service many years ago, I had a teacher, and we happened to be studying the U.S. Supreme Court. There was a great judge on that Supreme Court who had never been a judge until he became a justice on the Supreme Court. His name was Earl Warren. He was near the end of his judicial career, but he had been an Attorney General of California and also a governor of California. And then he was appointed to the highest court in our land. And the Warren Court, and especially Chief Justice Warren, when someone would come before the bench, he would always ask that question of fairness. Is this fair? And I think I've tried in my time as governor to always focus on that, especially when it comes to children and students and parents raising children. We've got to have a fair and decent society. And policy decisions that I've tried to make as governor have always focused on that fundamental issue. If we need the revenue in order to be fair to students, so be it. Because really what America is all about, history of our country, is that parents and adults sacrifice some of their present in order to help their children's future. We're a future-oriented society, our democracy, and here in Illinois. And we have to understand that it's very, very important that we be fair to the future. If we are so caught up in our own day, in our own time, and our own needs, that we forget those who come after us, we're really letting them down. So for each decision that I've made as governor, I've tried to keep those words in mind along the way. And I think we have made our society in Illinois a much better place, a more welcoming place, and a fairer place. And I do want to mention a few of those things. When I became governor, we didn't have the Affordable Care Act. We had to pass it. It was a tough battle to pass it in both the Senate and House in Illinois. That was not bipartisan. But we got the votes, and I signed it into law. We've added 818,000 people in Illinois to health care coverage in just about 1 year. That's a tremendous social advance. It's the biggest expansion of health care in the history of Illinois, and we should be proud of that. And we should not let that go backwards. In the area of housing, for the first time, we put money into our infrastructure budget, our capital budget, the budget we passed right after I became governor that invested billions of dollars into our economy. But housing for years and years was left out. We put housing into that, and a significant amount of money, about $140 million. And just this past year, we've been able to, with $1 billion, help over 10,000 people become homeowners in our state. And I think that's important, that we have to think of these fundamental needs of everyday people, whether it's health care or housing or education. We were able to pass a landmark education reform bill for all of our schools in Illinois. That was several years ago. It was hard fought. It was something that was bipartisan. I think that will serve us well in the future. We also believe in making sure that no one is segregated into an institution. Illinois had, 6 years ago, more institutions that house people with disabilities and mental illness than any other state in the union. And I thought that was wrong. I don't think that's the way to go. I think our courts have held that choice, the opportunity to choose where you live, is a fundamental right of every human being. So in the course of the last 6 years, we've been able to close a number of institutions and embark on a journey of community care, making sure that people have an opportunity in the community to fulfill their potential, whether they have mental illness or they have developmental disabilities. And that's still an ongoing movement, and I think it's important that we continue on that path of progress and fairness. Also, with respect to our veterans, those service members who answered the call to duty, particularly after 9/11, we all know what a horrific day that was. There are many young men and women who postpone things in their life, like going to school or getting married or getting a job, in order to volunteer for our military service. And I've been all over the world. I've been to Afghanistan and Iraq and Kuwait and Qatar and Germany and the American Military Hospital. And I think it's important to realize the sacrifice that these unsung heroes have made for all of us. And sometimes it is instructive when you come back from a military hospital and then visit with some folks in politics, the difference between someone who's willing to take on tough sacrifices and tough missions and those who are too timid. And I do think it's important for our politics to have people of both parties be bold with respect to doing the things that are necessary for the future, for the common good. I also think it's important that our state today is much greener and more sustainable than ever. I think we've made investment after initiative in water conservation. Our Clean Water Initiative is investing nearly $2 billion to help our water systems across Illinois. Same way with energy efficiency and also investments that we've made in the wind and solar and renewable energy. We're much farther along on that. We still have a long way to go. I served on the President's Task Force on Climate Preparedness, and I think every decision of state government when we come to building or rebuilding, we always have to keep in mind the principles of energy conservation, of water conservation, and definitely using renewable energy wherever we can. I also think it's important to have fairness when it comes to our tax code. It was a long, hard battle 3 years ago. Frankly, I think I was the only person pushing it at first, but fortunately we built a majority in both houses. There's something called the Earned Income Tax Credit. It's one of the very best ways to help alleviate poverty. Illinois has a modest earned income tax credit. We were able to double that, and I was able to get that done by speaking to legislators and summoning the public on behalf of tax relief for working families raising children. That's all about fairness, and frankly, we need to make the earned income tax credit even more generous in Illinois. If we want to fight poverty, raising the minimum wage, adopting the earned income tax credit, and another thing that we were able to do, which was make sure that we have our personal exemption on the income tax indexed every year to the cost of living. Those are fundamental things that build a fair society. I'm very concerned, I think everyone in America should be, that we cannot have a society where there are people of great wealth who tend to shift the burden of taxation and revenue onto those who are least able to afford it. So we have to fight for proper reform in the area of revenue. But other things that we've done outside of economics and jobs, 6 years ago, not everyone was able to marry the person they loved. Now they are. We passed marriage equality. It was a great reform. 6 years ago, our state had terrible problems with the death penalty and its administration. We've abolished the death penalty. We have much we understand the importance of justice, and we understand the importance of mercy. And we've been able, I think, to move forward at addressing the huge mountain of clemency requests, pardon requests that were there when I arrived. We're still working on that this very day and this very week. It's important also that we understand that we had to reform our ethics laws in Illinois. They're much stronger today. We passed for the first time campaign finance reform that had limits on contributions. I lived by those limits as governor for almost 3 years. And I think it's important that we understand that voluntarily limiting your contributions is part of understanding that we live in a society and a democracy of one person, one vote, not $1, one vote. We cannot allow a flood of powerful money to take over our democracy. It still is government of the people, everybody, and even those of limited means. So I think it's important that we can continue to look for ways to strengthen our democracy, to give people a chance more than ever to vote on issues as well as candidates. I've always believed in that. I think it's important in our state that we continue to expand the franchise. We were able this year to pass a bill, and I'm going to be signing it shortly, to allow for same-day voter registration, to allow voters to have an opportunity to vote by mail, to make sure you can register if you want online, and many other opportunities to pass petitions and make sure that we have a democracy that's free-flowing. If it's stuck where only a handful of those make all the major decisions, that's unhealthy for our democracy. And in my life, I've worked on things like establishing the recall amendment in our state constitution, also getting the Citizen Utility Board established. Those didn't really come from the top down. They bubbled up from the grassroots. And we have to look for ways to strengthen consumers' voice, strengthen voters' voice, strengthen workers' voice in our society. Otherwise, we won't have the democracy we aspire to. So really, the office of governor, to me, is one that belongs to the people. The governor is elected by all the people, all the voters of Illinois. Those you work with in the legislature, they have districts, and it's important that they represent those districts. But the governor has to represent the common good. And sometimes you have to have that view of the future and push the legislature to get to that point of view. And I think it's important that we continue on that. Progress never stops. I think we have made progress in the last 6 years from where we were 6 years ago in 2009 to where we are today. We have a lot more work to do. And I look forward to working with the City Club and its members to do that. I do want to say one more thing. When I got sworn in on the 29th of January of 2009, my father, who had passed away about a year before. He was not able to be there, but my godmother was there, as was my mother, and my brother Tom and John and my family. So it was a very emotional day, to say the least. But before his funeral, I was going through his papers with my mother, and I came across something that his commanding officer in the Navy had written about him as he was discharged from the Navy going into civilian life again. My father was in the Navy for 3 years, 1 month, and 15 days. That was his only public service. But I thought it was important to have a model that you serve as governor as, so I picked my father. And these words of his commanding officer, H.A. Carey, Night Torpedo Squadron 52 of the United States Navy, I, as governor, always wanted to aspire to. And so I hope I did. I want to read them today because I read them that night, and I think it's important to keep them close to heart. So Patrick J. Quinn is one of the finest men with whom I have ever worked. Extremely capable in his work. He was at all times cheerful, earnest, cooperative, frank, and honest. His personal character is beyond reproach. He is liked and admired by all of his associates. So that's what I've tried to do in my public life, and I look forward to many years, many years to come. Because in closing, I got 2 things to say. I got to live to 102 to pay off my kids' college loans. And I think all of my petition-passing friends would be disappointed if I didn't say it's time to make the will of the people the law of the land. Thank you very much.